So I'm welcome back, everyone. I am Angela, and Marcia, do you want to give a wave?
Hi, hi everybody. Nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Marcia's going to help us today. She's been volunteering with us, and she's a storyteller with us. She's been volunteering since I think September started, maybe getting more active. We're excited to have her. I did want to start and just if you want to take yourself off mute or if you want to put it in the chat, um, and just talk about if there is anything that in particular that you learned throughout this whole training series.
Mm.
I learned I have a lot more to do yet to complete my own end of life wishes. All very useful stuff last week, and that I was under some misapprehensions when it came to medical aid in dying. So I've been learning a lot.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, I'll speak, but it sort of just gave me some idea of structure because I'm so new to this that I'm expecting to have to do some programs. Actually, I'm trying to get a program going here in Saddlebrook, which would be sort of along the line of what we talked about last week. It would have to be, but anyway, I'm getting an idea of, I've gotten a good idea of what you would do in a program like that, and I did not know. So structure, I guess that's what I need.
And I think that we have shared this, but we have like, if you want to do presentations and stuff, we have pre-made PowerPoint slides that have scripts. And like Marcia today got a script, but she has rewrote it a bit so that it's in her own voice, so that's easier. So you're able to do that kind of stuff too.
I sort of got that idea last week. At the end of this, after today or so, are we going to have access to? Or are you going to send us like links to some PowerPoint slides and scripts we can use?
Yes, I'm actually going to send all of these PowerPoints, the recordings, and some additional resources.
Okay.
So
okay. That's what I want. Yeah, please.
Yes. And then I see in the chat box that it's never too early to start planning, and I better get started with my own planning. Yes, I was the same way. So, and then I learned a lot of things with this webinar and how behind we are in AZ. Susan, where are you in AZ?
There.
She's still on mute. Oh, okay. I'm in Phoenix. I don't know if you knew that. I live in Phoenix. Anything else, or did you all want to get started?
Well, I was going to say the other thing last week, the discussion was, I thought, sort of good. It led me to checking out further. And the Attorney General's office in Arizona has all the forms you need. And I found that very helpful, a helpful resource to, they've got everything you might need with the guides on how to fill them out and so forth. So didn't know that was there.
Yeah, the Attorney General's office will have the forms that you need, and then I guess the hospitals don't like their forms, so they made their own, which you can fill out whichever one you want, but the Arizona Hospital Association, I'm missing a word in there. I can send it to you. They have just a one page, because the point is like everyone feels like people don't fill out the forms, and so they're just trying to get it as easy as possible.
Is that the colored form you're talking about?
No, they're just your I'll send it to you. It's just your to name your healthcare proxy and to do your living will, but it's one page instead of three. And then I wasn't here last week, but I wanted to show you all of these in case you haven't seen these before. These are called the Death Deck. Can you see it? Are you familiar with this, Cindy?
Well, I heard it the first time on here for training.
Oh, yeah. So I just bought these. but they're they're good. I'm taking, my mom is, I was sharing with Marcia that my mom has stopped she was trying to tell me what she wanted at the end of life, but now she's like, oh, Chuck knows everything. So I'm taking these to Michigan when I go see her in 2 weeks, and I'm going to make her play with me. But they just say, like, what this one question says, have you ever witnessed someone taking their last breath? And you can say A, yes, it was something I'll never forget. B, not yet, but I would be willing to be present for a loved one. Or C, no, and I don't think I could handle the intensity of that experience. And they're just a whole bunch of different cards like that, that kind of really get conversations around end of life started. I see Kathy's got her hand up. Oh, you don't see anything?
No, okay, I bought a set too.
Oh, you
when
did?
The last time, and it came here to Utah. And so it's a ton of cards. I don't know how many, but like dozens, with multiple choice questions. And I'm going to use them. I'm going to be doing a program. I'm in an over 55 community development, and I was just given the okay to do a program on advanced care planning and advanced planning. And what I'm going to do is put 2 different cards in an envelope and give each of the people who attend that day an envelope. And then we'll go around and they can open it and they can look at both cards and they can choose one to read out loud. That way, if one of the cards really is too uncomfortable for them, it gives them a choice to do the second one. But I thought that would be something really eye-opening for them and a nice icebreaker to start the meeting.
Yeah, that is a great idea. I love that. Someone said they couldn't see. I'm just holding them up on my screen. So I don't know if you can see this, Marilyn. Yeah, one of them we played, and one of them is about your advanced care documents. And we played a Zoom webinar with some of our supporters in April. And one of them is like, the question is about your advanced care directives and do you have them done? And one of the answers is like, yes, I have everything done. I tell everybody I see exactly what I want. And like the second answer is like, I kind of have them done, but they're like in my safety deposit box or whatever. And then like option C is like, your guess is as good as mine. So they're kind of like these cute little cards that just kind of spark these conversations about end of life. And then they also have a different deck called the end of life deck, which is a little bit more. So these have, if you can see, they have like it's called the death deck with the little spell on it. So the EOL deck, the end of life deck, has a little koala on it, and like a little heart. And those are more, it's a smaller deck, but that's more for people if you want to do like hospice volunteer. Here's the little EOL deck. That's if you want to be like more like healthcare, and like if you want to have these conversations and people don't necessarily want to see like, the word death with the skull. This one's a little bit more gentle. So Hans, I see your hand is up too.
Yes, I was just going to put out a request if there's anybody in Utah or in Las Vegas who's giving a presentation like one you suggested, Kathy, you're going to be giving. I'm very interested, if I possibly can, to come along, if that would be okay, to observe how the session goes. I'm a relatively new volunteer, not yet fully involved for time issues, but I would, whenever there's an opportunity, like to see how these programs are rolled out, especially here in Utah.
Yeah, Kathy is in Salt Lake City right now.
Yeah. But I go up to Salt Lake City.
I am, but it's Dion, who's not here today in this particular meeting, who lives here. She's in downtown Salt Lake. And she belongs to a older women's group that meets once a month. And next month she's planning to do a program. So she would be the one to connect with to see if you could go to that.
Kathy's leaving to go back to Massachusetts. She just comes periodically. We rope her in, but all right. The whole end of this conversation actually is going to be about volunteering. So we'll go ahead and get started on the dementia presentation, and I'm going to hand it over to Marcia, and she is going to walk us through this.
Thank you, Angela, and good morning to everybody. And I'm here in Northern California. And dementia is an umbrella term for the progressive loss of memory, language, cognitive abilities, and functional capacities serious enough to interfere with daily life. The most common type of dementia is Alzheimer's disease and accounts for 60 to 80% of all dementia cases. The Alzheimer's Association reports that almost 2/3 of Americans living with Alzheimer's are women, that older Black Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's or dementia than older white Americans, that older Latino Hispanic Americans are 1.5 times as likely to have Alzheimer's or dementia than older white Americans, and that dementia kills more people than breast and prostate cancers combined. Mental decline can look different for different people, and most cases of dementia last 8 to 10 years. And during the advanced stages of dementia, most people endure irreversible loss of mental and bodily functions where they cannot recognize loved ones, they cannot recognize their surroundings, they can't speak or make themselves understood. They may experience personality changes, and they can't respond to the environment, speak, or control their movement. However, dementia is a progressive disorder, and many people can have meaningful lives and enjoyable years after the onset of dementia. Next slide. In April 2022, a University of Michigan study found that 1 in 2 older adults now die with a dementia diagnosis. Medical advances have figured out how to prolong our bodies, but not our minds. And furthermore, instead of treating dementia like the terminal illness it is, medical advances can extend the length of time a person lives with advanced dementia. And 60% of Americans receive non-beneficial, burdensome medical interventions. Next slide. So the question is, do we have any end-of-life options in the case of dementia? And yes, we do. Every adult with mental capacity has the right to document their desire to forego medical treatments. And even in the early stages of dementia, patients can also choose to voluntarily stop eating and drinking. Next slide. VSED is the acronym for voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, and is a conscious decision to refuse foods and fluids of any kind, including artificial nutrition and hydration. VSED is a patient-centered approach. It's a patient right. It's consistent with the body's natural dying process. It brings reassurance of an end to suffering or deterioration, and it's supported by most hospices. The U.S. Supreme Court has affirmed the right of a decisionally capable individual to refuse food and fluids. But even though it's legal, not every doctor or institution is understanding and supportive of this choice. I first became involved with Compassionate Choices as a storyteller when my mom, at age 98, chose to VSED, and my husband and I were her caregivers. She did not have dementia and she did not have a terminal diagnosis, but finally in her late 90s, she had started to have what felt for her like too many physical challenges. And she'd always felt strongly that she did not want to keep living if mental or physical problems were going to compromise the quality of her life. Being my mom's caregiver through her dying process was a huge learning for me, and really backs up what I continue to read and learn about VSED. VSED can be undertaken at home or in a care facility. If you reside in a care facility, you need to discuss your wishes with the nursing director or social worker, as you will need their agreement to support you. VSED cannot be undertaken alone. VSED needs to be medically managed to minimize discomfort. A person needs 24-hour care once the VSED process has begun, and ongoing hospice care or oversight by their physician. How long the process takes is going to be different for everyone depending on their physical condition, their age, the medications they've been taking, illnesses they may have, their height and weight ratio, fluid retention, ability to remain completely free of all fluids, which is really key, and perhaps a readiness to let go. For a terminally ill person, the process may take several days to several weeks after intake of food and water stops. Some people experience unconsciousness in as little as 2 to 3 days. Since the length of the process is unpredictable, planning ways to bring meaning, pleasure, and comfort during this time may reduce anxiety about the length of the process. Dying patients may want to choose favorite movies, music, poetry, or passages to read or be read to, share memories looking at photo albums and scrapbooks. That's what my mom and I did. They may want to keep a journal in the form of video notes or audio notes for loved ones, or create some kind of legacy project to leave behind for loved ones, and also have their caregiver apply lotion, body lotion, to keep their hands and skin hydrated, or use gentle touch or massage to ease any discomfort or suffering. I kept a journal of my mom's VSED week. The process was 7 days, or her dying process was 7 days. It was a very peaceful death for her. And I kept a record of that time, how she felt and what she said, how the experience was for me and my husband as her caregivers. And that journal is on the Compassion and Choices website. And there's also a book, Choosing to Die by Phyllis Schachter, whose husband had dementia. And it was helpful for me to read her description of how her husband wanted to stay alive while he still had the capacity to enjoy his life. But he also had decided that when it was time to go, he wanted to VSED. And they both knew he would have to stay ahead of the dementia and gauge when that time was before dementia took too much hold on his mental capacity. So with a dementia diagnosis, the VSED process can allow us a peaceful passing at the point where we still have the capacity to understand that we do not want to live once we've lost that capacity. And while we still understand why we're choosing to stop eating and drinking and can stick to our plan. Next slide. Thanks. So as we move on, we're going to address our care preferences in situations that may occur once we no longer have mental capacity. Compassion and Choices has developed the Dementia Values and Priorities tool, which allows us to let our loved ones know in advance how we would want to be cared for should we get dementia and lose our mental capacity. This tool provides our loved ones with clear instructions outlining our wishes in a personalized care plan called a Dementia Healthcare Directive, which can be added to a standard advanced healthcare directive and gives our loved ones a way to implement our end-of-life wishes with confidence. It spares them guesswork and perhaps having to make difficult decisions that may cause them feelings of guilt. This tool can be found on the Compassion and Choices website in the My End of Life Decisions Guide and Toolkit. And Compassion and Choices can also mail you a hard copy. Next slide. Okay. So we can fill out this dementia healthcare directive before we ever receive a dementia diagnosis or after we have been diagnosed with dementia, if we are still of sound mental capacity to make our own healthcare decisions. So here the box is checked that we haven't been diagnosed, but want to make our wishes known should we be diagnosed with dementia. Next slide. And here we see how the tool describes different situations that might come up or behaviors we might exhibit once we have lost mental capacity. And for each situation asks us which one of 4 care preferences we would choose. So the question is, I have forgotten everything about my past, but still recognize those closest to me. And so if we were in that situation, how would we answer? I want to live as long as possible is checked here, meaning I want all life-saving treatments and procedures, whether they be surgeries, ICU, ventilators, CPR, or feeding tubes. But we may also decide that we want no life-saving treatments. We maybe want short-term, urgent medical treatments, but we don't want CPR, ventilators, or feeding tubes. We can also we could also answer, keep me comfortable, and stop or avoid any treatments that are preventing me from dying from other diseases, antibiotics or heart medication. So in this case, we want to be kept comfortable so we don't suffer, but we don't want life-saving treatments or acute care. We want to focus on comfort care, such as aggressive pain and symptom relief, including breathlessness, anxiety, or agitation. And then the 4th care option, keep me comfortable while stopping all treatments and withholding food and water so I can die peacefully. So we're requesting that food and fluids be stopped in any form, including tube feeding and assisted or spoon feeding. And then there's also this, this does not apply to me button just above those boxes there, which we can click if a particular situation for some reason is not of concern to us. And we also have the option to click on the question mark button in the upper right hand corner there of the slide, which allows us to review what each of these care preferences entails. Next slide. So the question button accompanies each question. So for every situation that's described, we can get a more in-depth description of what each care preference would entail. So here's a longer paragraph about, I want to live as long as possible with all available medical treatments and procedures, no matter what the circumstances, or description of how I want no life-saving treatments. I want short-term treatments maybe, but no extraordinary life-saving procedures. So description about that care preference. Next slide. So here's another question. I no longer recognize my loved ones, and more often than not, I seem unhappy, sad, or anxious. So this slide has the 3rd box checked there. Keep me comfortable and stop. Oh my gosh, I can't, but you can read that box because I can't. But that 3rd one is checked there, but each of us are going to choose a different care preference for each situation. And I found these questions to be very thought-provoking because compassion and choices suggest scenarios for how I may feel or act if I have dementia. And there's certainly scenarios I hadn't thought of. And I find it very challenging to imagine myself in these situations and figure out what my care preferences would be. And Angela made a point to me that after we embark on thinking about our end-of-life wishes, we can always revisit these questions, and our answers over the years may change. And we can also add other wishes into this directive, including other situations we can imagine and what our care preferences for those would be. Next slide. So after a series of about 14 situations like this, The situations are combined so we can adjust our care preferences given a combination of circumstances. For example, if for the single situation on the top left, where I check there, I've forgotten everything about my past, but still remember those closest to me. Maybe I had indicated previously that I want no life-saving treatments in that event. But now, along with forgetting everything about my past, if you see the checks on the right column there, the only option to care for me is in a nursing home. I no longer seem interested in food, but I will swallow if a spoon is held up to my lips, and I am unable to leave my bed. My care preference might shift to, you see the box check then there, keep me comfortable and stop or avoid any treatments that prevent me from dying from other diseases, such as antibiotics or heart medication. Next slide. So we have an opportunity to consider a few combination of situations. And then if you look to the left, the blue menu to the left of this slide here, you can see that you would enter your healthcare you'd enter your information and your healthcare proxy, and you can also enter an alternative proxy. And then if you skip down the menu there, you'll see exclusion. It's highlighted. And you also have the option to write down if there was someone you don't want having access to information about your care. And next slide. So then you enter your information. Okay, and then next slide. Thanks. At the end of the tool, all the information you entered can be saved to your computer in the form of a dementia provision that you can print out and add to your advanced healthcare directive. Next slide. The most important point of this presentation is that we cannot do this alone. We need to bring our family and loved ones into the conversation about our end-of-life wishes. Not including them in our planning will definitely leave them with regrets and questions after we're gone. And it will have a great impact on whether our wishes will be honored and our plan will even be successful. It's important that we sit down with our family and have these conversations. My mom thought about her death for many years and would periodically share with me her evolving ideas about how she wanted to die. I certainly hadn't started thinking about dying or my own mortality when she started having these conversations with me, drawing me into these conversations. And she had her plan to voluntarily stop eating and drinking figured out years in advance of her getting to the point where she was ready to go. So when the day came, when she told my husband and I that it was time, we were not surprised, and we were fully on board and ready to help her accomplish her wishes. Next slide. So we're moving on to one other topic here, and this is another tool available through Compassion and Choices, which is the Dementia Decoder. And it's available online to help prepare for a dementia appointment and create a list of questions that we would want to ask. So first we want to indicate our situation. I'm in the early stages of dementia, and I want to discuss my future care and treatment plan, or I do not have dementia. I want to discuss my treatment plan if I get it, or I'm a caregiver. I want to discuss my loved one's care and treatment plan. And also my loved one has dementia and is being offered treatment for another condition. So in this one, that my loved one has dementia and is being offered treatment for another condition is checked, and that will generate another set of questions. Next slide. Where we can indicate our concerns and what we want to communicate to our doctor, as well as perhaps come up with some other questions and concerns not on the list. So here we may want to understand dementia better and its various stages, or we're interested in avoiding unnecessary tests, treatments, pain, or suffering for our loved one. We want to ensure our loved one and we are informed of all the treatment options. And we want to ensure our loved one's treatment wishes are carried out. So this one, avoiding unnecessary tests, treatments, is checked, and that will generate questions. Next slide. So here, these questions are checked. How would the doctor, the physician, recommend change if, depending upon what the loved one's priority was, if they were interested in finding a cure, or if they were interested in managing their symptoms, or they didn't want to receive life-sustaining treatment. So that's one question. Or what is the test for? What is a particular test for, and is it necessary? And what happens if that test is not done? Are there other ways to get that information? So these particular questions that you might have, you can check. And what are drug options is another one. And these questions that we're interested in will then generate to a next slide, a printout that we can take with us to the doctor, a question sheet with space for our answers. And I believe this is the end of my slide. So thank you, everybody. And Angela, back to you.
Thank you, Marcia. Good job. Before we move forward, does anyone have questions about what we just went over? Cindy?
Yes, first, Marcia, that was absolutely terrific. And I don't know whether you would consider, and I'm not sure, Angela, what would be proper, but if she could do something exactly what she did now and have it on your website so people could, and again, she may not want her face going to all the states in the United States, but I thought it was excellent. And I think a lot of people would like to hear it before they start the tool. My one question is, she said that VSED, one of the issues is close to the end of life, so it's a natural dying process. But a lot of VSED is done way before. So I don't know if Marcia knows that. Would that extend? I've read a lot about VSED, and it can go from 3 days to 21 days. Does she have any information if a person is ready to use it, but they're not close to the natural dying process, how long it would take? And I understand there's you have to take in the body weight and the height and the physical ability. I understand that, but does she have an answer for that?
Well, I'm going to defer to Angela, but I do want to say that, my mom was ready to die for a good 5 years before she ended up doing VSED. And she would always realize that she was too healthy. She was ready to go in her spirit, but her body was way too healthy, and she would have to face this and just find new reasons to keep living. And she found great reasons. I mean, she reorganized the library at her residential facility. and taught everybody, you know, she was helping people with their computers at 98, and she had her marbles. So her situation is, you know, I will never have the same mental capacity my mother had 2 days before she died.
Yeah, but
So
Marcia,
her situation is very unique, but she realized her body was too healthy. So but other than that, I think I would like to ask Angela what.
yeah. Well, I think I probably didn't ask the question right. It's that once you stop eating and drinking, there's a lot of weeks floating out there. But if you are not close to the end of life where you were talking about where the natural dying process has kicked in, about how long, Angela, is it really 3 days to 21 days, depending on your state of health and all that?
So I'm making sure. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that is what I have been told is, again, so VSED is legal nationwide. And so some people who have cancer, you know, and if they live in Texas, I'm sure you've seen this, Cindy, will choose VSED because medical aid in dying wasn't an option for them.
Right.
And so if they're terminal and are like, if the terminal illness is really impacting their life, what Barbara Coombs Lee, our founder, who is the nurse, has always said is that it's more likely that you will die sooner, and the healthier you are, you know, the more likely you're going to live longer. But that, to my understanding, typically is about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Could be up to 3 weeks.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm it. Thanks.
Hans?
Yes, I thought voluntary stopping of eating and drinking literally meant that. I always believed that without fluids, no one can survive more than 4 or 5 days. So presumably these other instances are in subjects who are drinking to some extent, right?
I think that also plays into it is a lot of times people, I know that we've had volunteers who have helped people through this process, and sometimes hospice will come in and, you know, not realize what's going on and give them water or such. Or like even patting their lips with water can make them live longer. And so it really depends, I think, also how strict you are as well. So I know people that were like, Dwight, Bill, I don't know if you know Dwight from Arizona End of Life Options. He helped his dad with voluntary stop eating and drinking, and his dad was in a assisted living facility in another state and had to put up signs all over saying he is doing voluntary stop eating and drinking because the staff kept coming in and trying to feed him or give him water. So
Yes.
that's why that's why we recommend 24-hour care, is to also make sure that there's people by you who are supporting you in that. So
and I'll say that it's in general not a real easy thing to do, because actually Joanne tried it a couple of times in her last weeks, where on Sunday she would say, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to. Well, then in a few days, something happens and she gets a little water and suddenly she eats something. She didn't mean to, but she did. It takes a lot of discipline, I can see, in order to really do this. I'll say that much, I know.
You know, one thing my mom, once she decided that she was ready to stop eating and drinking, we set the date for 3 months down the road. And so, you know, we had 3 months to get all her affairs in order. And that kind of assigning it a date in the future made it an event in a that kind of a way that it could possibly add to our conviction about it.
thanks, Kathy. Bye. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna give you guys this information in the chat box. We have some weird, I shouldn't say weird, hold on. This is the information about the NPR show. in case anybody was interested. We have, so there's laws around sending emails out to groups of people. So I can't just easily send you all an email. I would have to go through our digital team. So I just wanted you guys to have this information here in the chat box in case you were interested. I'll send it out with the email with the list of the PowerPoints and the recordings and stuff. But just in case it doesn't get out till, late Tuesday or Wednesday, I wanted you to have this information in case anyone was interested in calling in or leaving messages, or if you want to hear it. And then at the second link is the different ways to listen to the show. So you can just click on that and open it and then copy it down for later.
I'll add a comment. If you want to leave a message, it's really quite simple. They have an app that you download called something like Vox Talk or something like that. You download it, answer a couple of questions, and you push a red button and you talk. And it's a very simple thing to do in your home.
Thanks, Bill. And then next slide. So now this is how typically we end all of our presentations. So if you're giving a presentation to like a hospital, healthcare workers, we typically don't go into this part, but if you're giving it to community events, a lot of times people do want to volunteer and get involved. So we are, I think, a grassroots organization. So I cover several states, and then we have a bunch of volunteers throughout the states. So we're always looking for volunteers. There's lots of ways people can volunteer. So we always encourage people to sign up. If you're giving a presentation about this, we always tell people this is the time to get really excited. We need more people to join the movement. Especially now when there is such a pushback against bodily autonomy, we really need more people to stand up and talk about how important it is to be able to make decisions about what happens with our own body. Next slide. And then I typically don't include this necessarily when I'm talking to volunteers, but I'll go over it with them, but just different ways that you can help. So we have volunteers who, some people want to give presentations. Some people are like, that is not for me, right? But some people do want to participate and just say, what I can do to contribute to this is, Angela, if you can send me some flyers and some materials, I'll take them around and drop them off at my local senior center. We have a volunteer up in Flagstaff, Arizona, who was taking them to the libraries, and the libraries were letting her put them in the hallways with all the other resources. You can take them to different hospices. You can table at health fairs or farmers markets. I have another volunteer, again, who doesn't want to do a presentation, but she feels comfortable I could table at an event and talk to people. You can host a book club discussion on Finish Strong. Another book that you could do is the one that Marcia talked about. And Cindy, you might have talked about this too. There's another book that I'm about to get, and it's the VSED handbook. I'm not sure if you've read that, Cindy.
Yeah.
I was trying.
The Dutch doctor.
I am not sure. I was trying to download it on Audible when I was driving to California last week, and I couldn't. So,
Okay.
But yeah, you can. If you want to host a book club around any of this stuff, but if you do want to do it on Finish Strong, which is the book that our founder did, we already have a list of pre-populated questions to help guide the book club. And then you can talk to your doctor about medical aid in dying, and Doctors for Dignity. And we have, if you live in a state where medical aid in dying is authorized, I've often heard people say this when they live in the States, that it never occurred to them to ask their doctor, because a lot of times I don't think people realize that their doctor can opt out of providing it, or the healthcare system hospital can opt out of providing it. And this is not taught. We're trying to work with the universities to get them to teach more about end-of-life options in medical school, but in general, they don't get a lot of information on that. And so I hear from people all the time that live in states where it's authorized, and they say oh, would you help me with medical aid in dying, or however they phrase it. And the doctor isn't even familiar that it's an option sometimes, and doesn't know what the policies are around it. Which is why I think I shared it earlier in the presentation from a couple of weeks ago about the doc-to-doc line, where they can then call the doctors and get kind of mentored through the process if they're interested in helping. And then you can plan screenings of films. And Hans, I'm going to send you an email because there's a film called Last Flight Home. And they're going to be playing it in Salt Lake City. And the director is going to be there and with her family. And her dad used medical aid in dying in California. And then she did a documentary about the whole process with him and him using it. And then they're going to be there to do a Q&A session afterwards. So I'll send you the information on that. That's, I think, June 17th. So Andi is who is the director for Last Flight Home, and she has been doing these film screenings all over the country with Q&A sessions afterwards. She's actually doing one in Washington, D.C. on June 5th with a state representative from Colorado. And then Andi and Compassion and Choices, we're going to go talk to different members of Congress about medical aid in dying and trying to get rid of the assisted suicide funding, which is what the bill is called, assisted suicide. But we just had a storyteller yesterday who called and shared. So Andi was on Trevor Noah, The Daily Show, and her mom was dying. So this woman from Michigan, her mom was dying from cancer in California, and nobody had told her mom or any of them about medical aid in dying. And so she was with her mom in California, and Trevor Noah, The Daily Show came on, and Andi was on it talking about Last Flight Home and said, my dad used medical aid in dying in 2021, and it's about this. And that's when they found out about medical aid in dying and went and asked her doctor for medical aid in dying. So I'm hoping that, it gets information out about it. It was neat to see that.
Are there a list of other movies somewhere on our website, Angela?
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you, Hans, because I know you asked me about books before, so I found it.
Yes, so I run a book club and a movie club. This would be a good way to me to wet my feet without it being so obvious. Oh, and by the way, Kate Christie wrote the VSED handbook. Kate Christie, it only came out last year. It's not in my local library yet, but you can get it on Kindle or Amazon if you want to order it. It's not expensive. It's about $10.
I'd like a copy of that information. So can you include all of that in the email, all those resources?
Yes, I will.
Links, please. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then, so you can present to community members, organization, healthcare centers, hospices, healthcare staff. And typically what we try to do is if there are, if you're talking to hospice staff and they're going to be the hospice social workers, we try to do peer-on-peer education. So like I'm a social worker, so I'll give presentations in front of social workers. But like if we are talking to a bunch of hospice nurses, we have a volunteer who's a retired nurse, so she'll go in and do the presentation with them. So we try to link them up so it's peer-on-peer. And then stay informed and on message. We have more resources on this page. Next slide. All right, bye, Marilyn. Thank you. You can help with media activities. So you can share your story. So both Bill and Marcia are storytellers. I'm not sure if anybody else on here is a storyteller. But it's actually one of the most like meaningful ways that kind of bring people into this movement is when they hear other people share their personal stories. You can call into a radio show, write a letter to an editor. Kathy left early, but she's been writing lots of letters to editors and putting them in Massachusetts. And they're working on passing a bill in Massachusetts. So that's why she's focused in there a little bit more. You can educate your network by regularly sending and sharing our news, links, and posts. And then for all of this stuff too about sharing your story, Erica does our storyteller program, and Kelsey, and they'll help you kind of like hone it in. And I think you did like a workshop with her too, didn't you, Marcia? Where you guys kind of practiced on sharing it publicly?
Well, we were yeah, we had the webinar and we got together to the four of us got together to get organized for that. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I'm just going to share this because Marcia shared it with me. Tamna mentioned it's not too, it's never too early to start your own planning. And Marcia had shared with me the 4 storytellers that got together. The 2 youngest are the ones who are deceased now. And the Marcia and somebody else are both alive. So both of the 2 younger ones unfortunately died. They passed away from cancer. One was 26 and one was 34. So,
Oh.
then next. And then we also, again, if not presenting to like healthcare professionals, but if you're presenting to the community, some people, I'm actually lean this way. I would rather give my money than time sometimes, just because I don't have a lot of time. So if I'm really like into a cause, I just want to give them money. It's so much easier for me. But so Compassion and Choices is funded almost exclusively by individual donors. So it's not on this slide, but I think it's like 96% of our whole budget is made up from individual donors. We just have a tiny little bit of grant funding. So every donation of any amount makes such a huge difference. And so we just always ask people when we go out in the community or when we give our webinars, please consider giving a donation. And I think that was probably the easiest I've ever said that slide. And I think I say something like, I'm a social worker. I told you all. So I've always worked in public service and nonprofit. So I'm also like super used to like, you never ask for money. Like it's always like, I'm trying to, do this, just out of the goodness of my heart kind of stuff. I mean, obviously I get paid as a social worker, but it's like, you never are asking for, I used to do direct practice too. I never asked them for money for what I was doing for them. So it can be uncomfortable to ask for it, but once you get used to it, or if you really care about something, then it becomes so much easier to ask for donations. But I do just want to recognize, I understand that can be uncomfortable for people. Next slide. And then again, we just always, thank everybody who attends these, anybody who's ever going to volunteer. I certainly just appreciate all the volunteers. I love getting to know our volunteers. But volunteers are really the people. We have over 400,000 across the country. And they're really the kind of people who make this stuff happen. So thank you. So this is kind of the end of like the presentation part, but we'll move on to further discussion. Next slide. In the slide that you'll get, you'll have my email address if you don't already have it. Leslie, who has been sharing our screens. She, if you live in California, if you live in Southern California, she's your point of contact to help get information. Nico, who I think was on last week, he does Southern or Northern California and Nevada, if anyone's here from Nevada. And then Rid handles all the other Southwest states with me. Hans, do you have a question?
Yes, I saw the colorful yellow t-shirts in that last image. Where does one get one hands on one of those? That's a wonderful entree to discuss things.
I will see if we have more. We have to order more because we only had like 3XL size left. So we were trying to order more. But I can send you all some if you would like some.
So who would be my point of contact? I'm in Colorado.
So me and Red.
Okay.
Who's in Colorado? Cheryl?
Yeah.
Cheryl, if we have, I can add you to this meeting too. We have a volunteer meeting by Zoom the first Wednesday of every month at 4 p.m. And so I can add you to the calendar invite if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to send you an email.
I'd like to share this info. Okay, because I have some groups that I would like to, do some training with and share this information and, the movies, all of it, like the whole 9 yards. Just
wonderful.
Get it on my church calendar so that we can make it open to the community. They can come and participate. And
where do you live in Colorado?
I'm in Denver.
Okay. And we have other volunteers in Denver too. So if you want help, like presenting out,
Yes.
I'm sure they will come with you. They are
Yes,
very
yes.
motivated in Colorado.
Yes. I want it all. And I'm like him. I want a shirt too. I'll buy one if I need to.
They're free. They're free.
Yeah, I want a shirt too, Angela,
Okay.
Yep, me too.
but not extra large.
I know. I'll see if we got the. They were supposed to order new shirts, so I'll see if they've got
Yeah.
come in
Okay.
yet.
I need a medium, just FYI.
Extra small.
Okay. What was it? I was gonna say we probably went over that. We touched on it maybe a little bit, but in maybe the first presentation. But Colorado is the only state we did a ballot initiative, and they are very expensive to do ballot initiatives. Is why we don't do them in all the states. And they kept trying to pass the bill on the state ledge, and it just couldn't get through. So they did the ballot initiative in 2016, and it was the most favorable ballot initiative in Colorado's history that they did. So people in Colorado are
Good.
big fans of it. Yeah.
They won't let us do it in Texas for obvious reasons.
Yeah. We're working on Texas still. We're working on Arizona too. And Utah. We'll get around. So
Arizona needs help.
all right, bye, Marilyn. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, it costs usually a couple $100,000 to do it through the state ledge, and I think it was like 6 million to do the ballot initiative. But
Oh.
there was some. I guess there were some heavy donors in Colorado who really wanted this that helped fund it. So just talking about moving forward and kind of what we are hoping to see. So our goals for the upcoming year. So we're always trying to look at ways to change the system so that everyone can have an end of life experience that they want. One of the things for those of you that are in, states like Arizona and Texas, when I go through that dementia tool, and when I talk about end of life options, I always say, like, if you want to say, I want to live as long as possible and outline that, like, go for it, because I don't want people to get this idea that, like, we're trying to say, pick the least option, like it's all about, we want people to have the end of life experience that they want. So some people do want to live as long as possible. And some people on here know that the reason I really love the dementia tool is my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and she had made my mom promise, never, ever put me on a ventilator. And she had Alzheimer's for 8 years, and my mom wasn't with her. And my family from Tennessee happened to be up in Michigan. And they very much, value life at all costs and keep people alive. And my grandmother collapsed, and by the time my mom got to the hospital, they had already hooked up on a ventilator. They were talking about all life-saving options. And my mom was just devastated, like till this day is devastated over it. And they did remove her off it, and she died a little bit later, but just feeling like she really like failed her in that. And when you think of that, like that dementia tool, like it was really, my grandmother was really just at that second one. Like she just didn't want to be on a ventilator she was already in a nursing home. She was, they were already bathing her, changing her, feeding her. But that was it. She just didn't want a ventilator. So again, goes back to making sure you're having conversations with everyone. But doing public outreach and education, also diversifying the movement. So we've discussed throughout the presentation some of the health inequalities at the end of life. And a lot of it can be just different, like, cultural, different cultures, right? So sometimes in the Native American community, for example, one of my good friends is Navajo, and her dad had cancer, and she brought him here down to Gilbert from the reservation, and she was caring for him at the end of his life. And even when hospice showed up, she had to like run outside and tell them, don't tell him that he's dying. Like, don't mention death at all. And they just came in and provided comfort care. And it was like the day before he died, he had turned to her and he said, like, Jessica, I think this is it, So it's like, not, she didn't really know what kind of end of life experience he wanted because they didn't talk about it. It's kind of taboo in that culture. So understanding that and just finding ways to be supportive however you can and not just coming in. Kathy will share about it because when she first started volunteering with us, she's like, I was going like so hardcore and like, we're going to talk about medical aid and dying. And she's like, and then I realized I had to like step it back a little bit, and let's just talk about advanced care planning. So kind of going in that way. And then these are two of our great volunteers here, Carol and Ashley in Colorado. That was at the Alzheimer's Walk last year. And then next slide. And so now I just wanted to, it's 12:05. And we kind of did the brainstorming. If you want to stay on, you're welcome to. If you want to talk about some of this stuff, it's just brainstorming about what we can do. I know we spent like the first 15 minutes talking about it, but I just realized the time. So if you have to leave, feel free to jump off. If you do want to stay, I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer.
Bye, Angela.
Bye. I'm going to stop the